My name is Mary. I'm new at this, and we're going to try to figure it out together. So, I'm on a journey with Amantara, and I'm going to be basically documenting my journey. Um, so, Amantara have all kinds of natural products, different types of mushrooms, um, all legal, everything. It's all naturally sourced, exotically sourced, and I have been on antidepressants for about 15 years now. I am also in recovery. I have over 10 years in sobriety, and honestly, I'm just to the point where I feel numb every day. I'm a solo mom. I have a 15-year-old who lost her daughter when she was 4. She's experienced a lot of trauma, and my life just takes a toll on me. I'm also extremely like one of those people that likes to do everything all the time, and I have a million different types of, you know, um, interests. I'm all over the place. So when it comes to Amantara, I found it through Julian Dory, who made the recommendation. And honestly, I just started. I got my delivery yesterday. Basically, got the starter package of um, all their different types of products that they have. Not everything, but I started out, I chose the Amanita mushroom, Kenya, the shid, I think it's shiitake. I'm saying it wrong. Shiitake. This is Siberian Hachachi. It's for basically, maximizing your body. I'm a 40-year-old woman. I was always active. I was always athletic, and just I would say over like the last 10 years, just in recovery, I like let all of that go, and I need something different. I want off these antidepressants. I want to feel connected again. I don't want to feel so damn numb. Like, no matter what I do, I feel like I'm half in, half out all the time. And I refuse to just, sit back and keep my head down anymore. I worked the 9 to 5, like everybody, told me I was supposed to, and did what I was supposed to for so long. And I just got like burnt out to the point where I was just burnt out. Especially, like I said, my daughter, who's 15 now, and she was 4, she lost her father, and that was a traumatic experience. She was the one that found him unresponsive, and I've basically been solo parenting since then. Um, I did lose her to the state at one point. She, unfortunately, my addiction, took the best of me. I did leave her father when she was a year old because it was a bad situation. And I, you know, left with a backpack and a pack and play. And we went and lived in a domestic violence shelter. And I started self medicating, and it's no excuse, but I started self medicating, and basically it became my answer. It was a survival mechanism. Like, I don't know. I had this small child, and I was just trying to survive. Next thing I know, I'm living in a motel in the middle of, not a good area. And I did the best with what I had. And yeah, I've had a wild life. I mean, I'm not gonna minimize that by any means. I was a go-go dancer for many years. I've also am a former NFL cheerleader. I was a competitive athlete my whole life. I've had my share of adventures. I'm no share of there's no short of excitement in my past, and I just think that a lot of people that do or turn to drugs later in their lives, it's often a survival um, mechanism to try to just kind of get through whatever the situation is that they're living in. And my drug of choice was heroin, and I thought I was stronger than it, and right away it took me to my knees. I had never touched a drug in my life till I was 27 years old. And from 27 to 30, I fought the addiction, and I'm lucky. A lot of people don't get it that quickly. I used for about 2 years, and then I went into rehab. I got out of rehab, had a relapse, went in through like the crisis center, through the hospital, and I've been sober since. June 26th of this year, 2026, I will actually have 10 years in sobriety. So to me, I mean, it's I wouldn't change it for the world. The things that it has taught me, and the person it's made me, I wouldn't be this person if I hadn't gone through that. Uh, you learn gratitude is not just some beautiful word they put on throw pillows anymore, right? Like gratitude has is losing your child and having to fight for them back, and learning that when you have nothing left, there's something to hold on to. I lost everything that I had worked for, um, to this addiction. To the point I was living in a Lair State Park in a tent with nothing but some Ritz crackers and the clothes on my back, and I had an Obama phone with like 5 minutes on it. And I remember just trying to get sober, and just saying that I was grateful for a cold shower. In the middle of July, there was like all these families around in their RVs, and they're picnicking, and they're having fun time camping, and I'm like 10 days clean and sober, living in a tent because nobody would take me in, and I had nothing. And a raccoon ate my Ritz crackers. And I just remember being grateful that I had a cold shower, and grateful that I had the couple minutes on my phone that I could call my daughter and let her know that I'm okay. And one of the rawest moments I'll never forget was when she looked at me. She was 5 years old, and it was during like supervised visitation, and she looked at me and she said, "Mommy, I can't live with you because you're giving yourself shots the doctor didn't prescribe you, right?" And, you know, looking at your kid is like one of the, I just felt completely naked, and in all sense of the word. There was no hiding, there was no running. I was straight confronted with everything that I had been did wrong in that moment. And I looked at her and I said, Mommy did make really bad decisions, and I messed up, and people make mistakes, and I'm doing everything I can to get better so that I'm better for you and that it doesn't happen again. And I learned to have to take responsibility for the things that I did. I couldn't blame the domestic violence. I couldn't blame the, the rough childhood. And I mean, going through those things in recovery and learning about how they affected you is one thing, but taking responsibility for your part in something is completely different. And that brings me to the next, I guess I would say, pillar of recovery. So I would pillar number one would be gratitude. Pillar number two for me has been perspective. Really finding that you our perspective is so narrow and small. We think we understand things that we hardly, narrowly understand until you actually step into the shoes of somebody. You can't criticize them. You just can't. I'm also a volunteer EMT, so when I really learned perspective, because before I used drugs, I was the person that bad mouthed people that did drugs. I didn't understand it. I just never touched it. Never, not even in the slightest bit did I ever touch it. I was not even in marijuana, like in high school I smoked, and then I could care less about it. I had a near death experience when I was 17, and that's a story for another time. But I really learned how to have a different perspective. It When I lose my perspective, when I decide that I think I know everything, I tend to get really um judgmental, right? So, and when I get judgmental, it makes me anxious. So I've noticed the less judgmental I am, the less anxious I am, and then the less in my own head I get about the situations and the decisions that I'm making. Um, so that's pillar number two. So gratitude, perspective. The next one would be compassion. Compassion for others and compassion for ourselves, because when I lose my compassion, I find that I get severely depressed. Um, we gotta stop being so damn hard on everybody. Like, we're all just out here trying to do our best with what we have. And there are people we need to be tough on, like these people that want to send out donation letters, such as Turning Point USA and Erica Kirk. You want to be in the spotlight, but you don't want to be criticized. Well, that's different than what I'm talking about when I'm saying we need to have a bit of compassion for people. That woman needs a serious reality check, and her she just actually reminds me of an addict. She completely reminds me of an addict in full blown addiction who has no ability to take responsibility for their own actions and is just looking to manipulate every single person around them so that they're able to get ultimately what they want. And addicts will lie and steal and cheat, and I remember growing up, my mother used to tell me, drugs don't make you a bad person. They make you do bad things. And that's so true. And when I talk about drugs, I am not talking about the actual substance. I am talking about the addiction, because the addiction doesn't just have to be a substance. That is just a symptom of what addiction actually is, right? So we talk about addiction in the sense of it's the behaviors, right? So gambling addiction, the behaviors are exactly the same as a active heroin addict. In fact, I haven't spoken to my childhood best friend because her other half has a serious addiction problem, and I see it firsthand, and she believes that she's supposed to stick by him, and I understand that. But what I said to her was, if he was doing heroin, would you expect me to stay around and be okay with that? And she was like, I would never be with somebody like that. And I said, that wasn't my question. My question was, if he was doing heroin, would you expect me to stay around? And obviously her answer was no. And I said, see, that's the part that you don't get when you haven't gone through an addiction and had to get sober. The the gambling, the drugs, the stage performances like Erica Kirk, they're just the symptom of the underlying addiction that's driving her behaviors. And that's what so many people don't understand, and why so many people want to judge addicts or people that have really, had to hit rock bottom before they come back up, is we are actually better off than the people that haven't had to go through that type of introspection, because we have to face ourselves. We have to man up and take responsibility for our part in whatever happened. We have to say, what can I control and what I can't. We have to make right on the things that we make wrong. I mean, that's what the recovery is about. It's not about abstaining from a substance that is just so surface. And honestly, anybody that thinks it's just a matter of doing the substance and not has a lot of educating themselves to do. Now, back to my pillars. So, yeah, gratitude, perspective, compassion, um, growth. Like you need to have set goals for yourself, because if you don't set aspirations and goals for yourself, you become mundane, because you get so set on just getting back into a part of society that is accepting of you. You're looking to regain that trust and in that acceptance. It's a very difficult place to be in. Nobody trusts you and your family. Every place you go, you feel like you're being judged by the people around you, whether they're um, looking at you. They're probably not. I mean, I'm lucky enough I don't have a look to me where a lot of people do when they get sober, but it still doesn't mean those internal voices aren't there thinking that you're being judged. That took me a long time to get past. Um, and in fact, the one person that I thought would be, oh, Mr. Pickles is sleeping back there. Do we want to see Mr. Pickles? I'll give you guys the sleepy kitty. See him? That's my sleepy kitty. That's Mr. Pickles back there. So, I lost my train of thought, but in the grand scheme of things, oh, goals. Because when we first get sober, and the best analogy I can explain it is like you're driving down a road and you're just throwing everything that you don't want to deal with or that you are running from in the backseat of that car. You're just throwing it and you're throwing it and you're going about it and you're just ripping and running and out there doing what you got to do. When you get sober, it's like you hit the brakes and everything from that back seat just goes boom and slams right into the windshield. So everything that you've been putting off, you still have to confront. It doesn't go away, especially if you're working to really get your life on the right track. So all of a sudden you go from this person that's just going around doing what they're doing, only concerned about yourself, to all of a sudden now, for me, trying to show DCPMP that I'm capable of taking care of my child, trying to gain trust within my family, trying to get financially back on my feet and get a job. You got IOP and you have, all these other things that you have to. And the best example of it was when we were in, when I was in my intensive outpatient program, they gave us balloons, and they give you one balloon and you just kind of start, it says, don't let that balloon hit the ground, right? So you have to like juggle that balloon. And that's great. All right. Well, now they give you two balloons. All right. Well, now you're like trying to not let these two balloons flip the floor, right? You got to keep this stuff afloat. You got to keep. Now they throw something else in there. Now you got another balloon, right? So now you're trying to keep all of these different pieces afloat in order to just function, and you can't let any of them hit the floor. And this is why so many people fail, I feel, in the beginning of recovery. They're just, there's too much on their plate, and every person's recovery is treated as this like a straight line algorithm. Like, this is the way you have to follow it, and this is the way that you get clean and sober and get your life back. And that is so far from the truth. um as I'm sure you know, or you've heard, you know recovery is such a personal experience, and that person has to be ready. to get sober or clean. I mean, there's nothing you can do until that person hits their bottom. What I can tell you is that any bit of interaction is enablement. Um, Anything. I mean, from keeping them in your house to feeding to money to anything. I mean, the best thing my parents could have done for me is to completely cut me off, give me absolutely nothing. And it wasn't until I actually got sober that, what they gave me was a tent in Alaris State Park and Ritz crackers. And if I wanted to eat, I had to get to my mom or wherever, and she would come out and she would bring me a sandwich. And that was only because I was sober. Any type of enablement to an addict gives them a reason to keep going one more day. That's the best advice I can give to any parent struggling with a child that's in addiction. It's going to be the hardest thing you ever have to do. But if you give them anything, you can call, check in. They need that. They do care. They do want to hear from you, even if they don't answer. But you cannot give them anything. And I know that's probably the hardest thing I think I've seen most parents struggle with. And I worked in the recovery field for quite a few years before I just said, you know what, I started to get jaded, just like anybody else, like file after file. And I actually just spoke on this at the Children in Court conference for the New Jersey court system. I work with the Department of Children and Family Services in New Jersey. They have the Office of Family Voice. So our last Department of Children and Family Commissioner, Commissioner Breyer, she did wonderful work with going around and just getting like live stories with people that have lived experience within the system in New Jersey. And she decided to assemble the Office of Family Voice, which basically is then breaking down into subgroups. So we have Parents Council, which is what I am on. We have our Fathers Council. We have our Youth Council, which is, younger children with lived experiences. And we have our LEAP Council. And these different councils, we coordinate, we work with all different organizations across the state, from New Jersey Task Force Against Child Abuse and Trafficking, domestic violence. We do a plethora of things. We've had I think 111 collective items that our group came up with that we said these are things that need to be addressed. So we basically broke them down into 6 core principles, which is like, truth and transparency, because, when you're involved within the system of DCPMP, there just feels like there's so much manipulation going on. And we're involved in how the caseworkers are now being trained. We're involved in making a book that if the Department of Children and Family have to come into your home, you're no longer just like left with like, how does this work? So we've basically been putting together a parent handbook that you receive. It has all the different programs in it, what's your rights, what you need to know about what you can and cannot do. I mean, these are things that we were never given. I'm working currently to try to get mold regulations to be seen as hazardous to children through their eyes. So, in the United States, there are a few states that have passed laws, but in New Jersey, we do not have laws on mold in buildings, especially apartment buildings. And I have personally had a struggle with this. I worked very hard to get my daughter back. We had rented a couple bedrooms in somebody's like basement area. It wasn't ideal. Bathroom was upstairs. We didn't have a kitchen. We were there for like 5 years. I finally got enough to move us into a great apartment. It was during COVID. I kept her in the same town. We get into the apartment. I'm there for a few years. And the last like year and a half I was there, I just started getting like sick all the time, and my brain was foggy, and the real thing was like I started swelling like crazy, and my daughter was super depressed. I couldn't get her to go to school. Well, lo and behold, we find out that this apartment, which we had moved into, had just been redone, but the building wasn't new, had a serious mold issue in the HVAC. And when I tell you that my landlord gaslit us and treated us, and I mean, literally, I'm still recovering from the mental anguish that this woman put us through in the last year that we were living in these apartments. And let me tell you, furthermore, in the process of that, I was getting evicted because I wasn't paying my rent because of the mold issue. Which, these landlords, they know how to manipulate the courts and get things done. So I'm trying to get this issue reconciled because I don't want to move my daughter. I don't want to move again. I just want our home to be safe, right? So I work with like the Change the Air Foundation, and finally I get her to come in and replace the vents and have somebody come to clean the system. And basically I get a letter from a lawyer stating that they did a mold test and that there was zero mold. First of all, every home has mold in it, all homes. So for you to say there's zero mold is a lie. Furthermore, through the Change Air Foundation, got what they have is a dust test, which is where you dust your house and they send it out to a lab, and then they return it to tell you what kind of mold contaminants are in your home. Well, let me tell you, there were 17 different types of mold contaminants out of the 36 ones that they test for in my environment. And then they scale it on like normalcy, like how much is in a home till if it's hazardous. And then even with sending this information to my landlord, like she just, in every step of the way, gave us a problem. I mean, from calling the cops on me because I'm an EMT. So when I would come home and it would be in the middle of the night from a call, and I would lock my car and it would beep, like just ridiculous things. So eventually we got out of there. It ended up being an absolute blessing because now we're in a beautiful house I could have never, ever in a million years imagined we would be in. And when I tell you that like God works in mysterious ways, I have been an example of that every step of the way through my journey in recovery. I remember when I was first trying to get my daughter back, I did not know where I was going to live. Like, what do I do? So I have to rent a room. It's the only thing I can afford. So how do I rent a room in somebody's house and tell them, hey, I'm 7 months sober and I'm trying to get custody of my daughter back, but don't worry, you can trust me. Like, I was like, nobody. Well, remember Craigslist? I did absolutely find this wonderful woman who was renting a room in her house, and I went there and I didn't say anything about anything yet. And then I just mentioned that I'm part of the recovery community. Well, coincidences or divine timing, she actually was heavily involved in the recovery community. All three of her children were in recovery, and this house that she had other people actually living in this house. They were all actually in a recovery program as well. So it ended up being this perfect environment for me. And then as people moved out, I was upstairs originally. I moved downstairs. Then I said, I rented 2 rooms from her. And then once I got my daughter back, and then after a while, we kind of decided, like, there was 3 rooms downstairs. So I said how much to just rent the whole basement, so we didn't have a roommate anymore. So that's how we kind of progressed from there. And it happened that way. And then I got engaged and I was in a relationship, and wasn't working out the same way that it was before. So it was time for us to leave. It's the middle of COVID. I have no idea where I'm going to go. By the shop right by my house, with a boot store by my house, there was always these apartments that I drove past every single day when I went to work, when I went to ShopRite, whatever. And I always there was like 8 apartments upstairs, and there's these doors downstairs. And I just had always said, "Oh, I would love that. Would be perfect for me and my daughter. That would be perfect for us, right?" Well, I remember one day I just pulled over to the side of the road and I called the number that was on the sign. And there just happened that she just finished redoing an apartment and had an available. And I remember the next day she called me and said, "I need you to get your stuff in. I already have 41 applications for the apartment." This was what it was like in, like, I think we moved in September of 2021. So it might even have been 2000. No, it was 2021. So, like, it was impossible during that time. If you remember what it was like to try to find a rental, is everyone was selling their homes and living in rentals. So anyway, we get into this place, and like I said, it was in the same town, and it was almost like type of manifestation. Well, in the meantime, after I go through all of this other stuff, I separate from my fiance, and we decide that we have to leave this house, or we have to stop this eviction. So I apply to get different assistance for addiction. Addiction. I applied to get different assistance for the eviction, and well, my luck, I get it all together because it was like 6 months behind, so it was a lot of money. I get two different organizations to work together. Well, Catholic Charities, Diocese of Trenton, um, they send the check that I was approved for, but it was just over $1,000 short. Well, without going into too much detail, basically somebody there stole the money from me. When you're in an eviction, if you don't zero out your account, that eviction can go back to court. So because that check came through short, my account never hit zero. My landlord was then able to take us back to court and get us evicted. So now at this point in my life with my daughter, I've had a car repossessed, where she lived through that with me. We were evicted when I was in active addiction, and we were put out on the curb. And anybody that ever says they don't evict you with children, they can't do that, they do it. My 4-year-old daughter and I locked out of the house on the curb. I had no car. I was in active addiction, and you're left to just, this is what it is, one sheriff and your landlord. And they give you basically like a half an hour to get out, if that, if you're lucky, to get your stuff out that day. Um, so now we get evicted from the second apartment. Same thing, basically put out of the curb. You know, this poor kid has just witnessed so much, and I'm just trying to do my best. I'm educated. I work hard. You know, um, I'm also an EMT. I do Instacart after hours. So anyway, um, we're looking for a house, and my EMT partner, he he has two sons. He's older. His one son is 37 years old, and he has Down syndrome, and he's also like my best friend. But he lost his mother 15 years ago. So me and my friend decide, you know what, maybe we should just get a place together. Everything's so expensive, and I just remember I don't couldn't find anything in the town we lived in. I was so upset I was going to have to move my daughter after how hard I tried to keep her in this town. And I remember getting the phone call or a text message from the realtor. "Are you still interested in, this address in the town you live in, the town I lived in?" And I was like, I didn't even remember finding this house. I didn't remember applying to it. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, I had no idea what it looked like. I had no idea where it was. I just knew it was in the town we already lived in. So we come and look at this house. I'm crying right now because this house is more beautiful than anything that I could ever imagine. I am so grateful for where we are. We are on the bay. We have a beautiful backyard, huge backyard with a dock. We're in this little coved corner where the house looks much smaller than it is. My daughter has her own room, the bathroom. Matt has his own room. We decided to make the room that I'm in right now is massive, and it's all full of windows, and it's mainly supposed to be the living room. Well, we decided to split it and make it like two bed. We put both of our beds in it like it's a dorm room, and then I have the other bedroom which I made my office. But if anybody that has a child with Down syndrome or special needs, you know that they don't really get out much. And I mean, just the fact that Matt gets to go, he goes out and sits by that dock at every day. Um, my daughter just, she doesn't, she's actually allergic to the sun. She has an allergy to the sun, so it's kind of hard for her. But just the joy that I see out of her is priceless. Listen, it's not cheap. We're struggling. The electric bill is freaking like $2,500 right now. We got disconnection notices. I'm still trying to heal from the mold illness and the mental everything. Thank God my best friend he as a man has stepped up and has given me the utmost space to heal and to do what I need to do to just get through whatever this state is in my life. And it's been a deeply spiritual journey where I've returned to God and returned to our Lord. I was very lost for a long time. When my daughter would ask me if I believed in God, I told her that, Mother Nature was my God. And I still believe that. But now I do believe in a more divine spirit because of the amount of divine timing in my life that has happened, the amount of things that I could have never, ever, and that was only a couple examples, have foreseen to fall together in the places that it did. I could look at my life and be extremely angry and say, why did you put me through this and why did you put me through that? And I just never was like that. I was just always in a place where I found joy and love and gratitude in the things that I found. And I was extremely, don't get me wrong, in my 20s I was extremely selfish. I was extremely petty, materialistic to an 80s baby to the fullest. But I mean, I let my car get repoed just recently because it just doesn't matter. Those material things just don't matter. And I'm angry that I'm not more joyful. The depression that I have suffered with for so long, whether it's the depression or whether it's the long time antidepressant use, I'm not sure. And that is what has led me to Amantara. I have been looking into microdosing for a very long time, and there has been great reviews on their site with their different products. So me get my box so we can show off our products. Now, so I basically got this starter kit from, and they have a plethora of different products, but the Amanita muscaria mushroom is that very famous mushroom that if you tell somebody to draw a mushroom, they're going to draw the Mario mushroom, right? That red mushroom with the white caps. So we have the full caps of the Amanita muscaria. And then that starter kit also came with the Amanita muscaria capsules. So I have taken one of these today, and I'll tell you what, I've been trying to make a video for the past year, and I'm actually doing it. So that whole creative thing, I'm although I don't feel anything, I'm guessing it's working. And then I got this is the rest of the starter kit. So the cookies and cream, chocolate bar. So that's that starter kit. And then I got the Egyptian Blue Lotus starter kit. So that came with the dried flower, the blueberry Blue Lotus gummies, which I did take one of these on top of my Amanita muscaria capsule. So I also additionally have narcolepsy, so I'm always tired. That's a whole nother story for another day. We'll drive down that. And then I got the Kenna starter kit. So the Kenna came with the powder. It came with the I think it's called Mama Kenna, and this is a sniff. And then it came with the Kenna gummies. So that was starter kit. And then the one thing I missed was the Blue Lotus essential oil, which smells delicious. It did leak a little bit in the box, but honestly, like every time I walk in my room now, I smell it. It's very, very grounding. I did put some of this on last night before I went to sleep, and I would say that it did have an effect on my sleep because you do smell it. I mean, it's very strong, but it is so, I don't know, beautiful smell. And then I got the which I left in the kitchen, darn it. The shahati, I think it's called. It's like a resin, and you just basically dissolve it in some warm water. So I also started with that this morning. So basically what I did so far was I woke up. I used the roller last night just to kind of, I was excited when I got my package. And then today I woke up. I took a little bit of, they say like a rice or pea-sized amount of the I'm butchering this, I'm sure, the shahati resin, and mix it in water, and it really does have a potent taste. So mix it in some water, drink that, and then I would say maybe 3-4 hours later, maybe about an hour ago, maybe even a little bit more than that, I took one capsule of the no, I didn't. I took one of the Blue Lotus gummies, And now I'm working with my doctor, but I've been on Effexor for many years. And Effexor, if anybody knows, if they've ever tried to get off an antidepressant, is worse than heroin. I cannot get off of this antidepressant. It is, I get so sick and so nauseous, and my brain feels like it's loose. But, and there's a warning, you are not supposed to take Kenna with any kind of MAOI, SSRI, any kind of serotonin, because you can get serotonin symptoms. I'm working with my practitioner to wean me off of the Effexor, which we've been working on. I'm down to the lowest dose as I kind of convert and hoping to make the transition with the Kenna. Now, I know the founder's story, he talks about basically getting through benzodiazepine withdrawal with this. So it's potent. And now every one of these products, if you go to their website and you use MOM10, you will get 10% off. Again, that code is MOM10. And it will break everything down for you. And if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email, shoot me a message on X. My email is, I'll put it in the show notes for you guys. I'm new at it, but I'm willing to be open about my journey, and that's basically why I'm making this video, was to document my kind of my progression through it. So my initial experience is so far so good. I haven't, like, nothing feels like psychedelic like that, but I would say that the ability to focus and creativity and just kind of follow through, just have that little bit of like kind of pep, like, I would say, yeah, I feel that. And now just kind of refresh for anybody that and I think I might even got lost on my pillars of recovery, because I think that's important. So gratitude, compassion, perspective, goals, and you know what? I kind of missed this one, but mentorship. Mentorship is essential, because without somebody to lean on and look up to, or to work through things with, you're on your own and that doesn't work. And that's why people have AA and NA, right? And 12-step program, I was in it for 2 years. I did it religiously, and it got me sober, but I felt held back by it. I don't want to be defined by my worst times in my life, right? So even with that, I don't like to say that I'm in recovery or I'm a recovering addict. I like to say I'm a surviving addict, or surviving addiction. Just like somebody would say they've survived cancer, or they have survived a near-death experience. I have survived active addiction, and I feel empowered by that, rather than feeling belittled by saying that, I'm in recovery, because that connotation just carries this negative weight through your life. And I don't want that. I don't want to be defined by that. I'm so much more than that couple years in my life. But those couple years in my life have been extremely influential in every aspect of the way of who I am today. And that I wouldn't change. I've learned that main thing is, there's things you can control and there's things you can't. And you need to pick and choose your battles, where you're going to put your energy. And with a daughter with special needs, with PTSD, with everything, that she takes 90% of my energy. So that doesn't leave me much. And that is the way my life is right now. And I'm okay with that. But I need to manage that 10% of energy I do have left in the best optimal way. I mean, there's nobody coming through the door. There's nobody coming to save me. I'm solo dolo. And solo parenting is not the same thing as single parenting. Let me get that straight, okay? There's no passing her off on the weekends. There's no, hey, the kid's sick. Can you get her from school? Like, solo is very different. And it does take a special person to go through challenges like this. And I do feel that my challenges were given to me because I have a bigger purpose. There is something, I'm not sure what. Ever since I was even a child, I felt that I was meant for something bigger. And I felt so stupid saying that, but then like growing up I was so different than everybody else. Like I never fit in. I was always a little strange. Like I was very kind and I had friends and I can make friends, but then I always ended up just kind of becoming like this recluse. And I felt feelings and emotions so much stronger than I felt like everyone else around me. Like when I was sad, I felt like I was so much sadder than anybody else felt about a situation. Or like when I was like, so my feelings were like very elevated. And today I can understand them as I'm an empath. So when somebody walks into a room, I can feel that energy. If somebody doesn't is talking about me before I even walk in that room, I know it. Like it's such an odd thing to get in tuned with. And then the next video I make, I'm going to go into my near death experience and some of my other spiritual experiences in my life that have led me down the path that I've been down. And I hope that this my journey can help somebody. And if anybody's looking for information about natural products to help them through these, difficult times with whatever it is, I highly recommend Amantara. And stay tuned. Please hit follow, hit like. I'm new at this, guys, so the more support, the better. And stay tuned. The next video, I'm definitely going to follow up on my journey, and we're going to talk about that near-death experience. For now, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.